Hey, dethroners, welcome back to the Dethroning Your Inner Critic podcast. I am really excited for this conversation today. I have with me Matt O'Neill. He is the host of the Good Mood Revolution podcast. He's an author, and he is on a mission to spread positivity as one of the leading experts on happiness education. So we are going to talk today about how to choose happiness even when life gets challenging. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Joanna, I am so excited to be here with you. You're one of my favorite people.
Yay. Oh, that makes me feel good. Thank you. Yeah, we were just talking about, I was just on the Good Mood Revolution last week, and I was saying to Matt, like, oh, when was that? Like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago? And he said 7 days ago, which, is just an indication of how life just flies.
And it's so cool too. So one of my favorite ideas is this idea that we can slow down time.
Yeah.
Which is what you just did.
I did.
So you felt like the past week really happened within 3 weeks. And that means you're cramming a lot of life into your life. And that's how we slow down time, is we do so much, and our life is so big that we can't even keep track of it all.
It's true.
I had this. So, but what comes with that too is stress.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes,
and I'm sure if you're living that big of a life, there's stress that comes along with it. Yes. And, my life is really big, and, we've got 4 kids, and I have multiple businesses, and publishing this book, Good Mood Revolution, and running the Good Mood Revolution podcast. And, there's 80 employees that work in my companies.
Unbelievable.
And it is so big, right? And sometimes it's so stressful. But I had this doctor, a guy named Dr. Ryan Smith, really brilliant guy. And he gave a speech last fall, and I was feeling particularly stressed out. And he said, the bigger your stress, so long as you have a hopeful view of the future, the bigger your joy and fulfillment.
Oh, okay.
And
I love that.
I was like, wait a minute, is this true? So when we had one child, that was, we went from 0 children to 1 children, a lot more stress.
Yeah.
But we had a hopeful view of where this is going to go, more fulfillment. We had another child, even more stress, and yet more fulfillment, right? I had one business, a lot of stress, but hopeful view of where this was going, a lot of fulfillment. So I kind of agree with this idea that the bigger your life, so long as you're hopeful and optimistic, the more your fulfillment.
Absolutely. Because it's, you just keep reaching for what's next, right? Which is so important, because that's all about growth. But I think where a lot of people get lost in that is keep reaching for what's next, without really grounding themselves in, wait a minute, let me just step back and be in awe of the magnificent life that I'm living right now. Mm-hmm. Right? So I am curious, talk about a big life, right? You went from, I think you said you had a business of 100 employees at one point, $10 million in revenue, achieved everything you wanted, and still there was that kind of lack of fulfillment that so many people, when they get to the top of the mountain, experience. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit about what happened when you got to that top of the mountain?
Yeah, so absolutely. Thank you for asking. And this is what the definition of happiness that we were kind of sold our whole life.
Yes.
Is an ego definition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The more money you make, the more happy you'll be. The nicer your house is, the nicer your car is, the nicer your vacations are, then life is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I bought it. I bought that whole lie that, hey, the more successful you are, the happier you'll be. And I think we kind of have to try that route. All of us have to try to control the external world and get everything we want.
Yep.
Just to find out that actually that's not what it's all about. And
That's
so I
right.
did. I went right after it. I dedicated myself to my career, to growing it, to learning all the mindset tricks about how to grow wealth, to, having the perfect family and having the perfect children, which wasn't good for them, I can tell you.
No, right. Yeah. How old are your kids now?
10, 8, 6, and 2.
Oh, good that you recognize that now instead of
Uh-huh.
later. Wow.
Yeah. So,
That's
and
great.
we can talk about that too.
Hmm.
This wake up was also in the way that I was parenting, because I realized I was also parenting them to follow the same path. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you have to get good grades. You have to be successful in your sports. And I was putting them in the exact same pressure situation of
Mhm.
lack of internal happiness,
Yeah.
even though I was learning how to get out of it myself. And then thankfully, you can undo it. And children are very adaptive, and so are adults. So I
Yeah.
undid it for myself as an adult. I've undone it for my children. But you
Yeah.
can still be successful and happy.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
two of them can coexist. Let's talk about what actually makes us happy.
Yes.
Happiness comes from being really happy with reality. So I'll unpack this. And you think back to moments in time when you're your happiest. The day I met my wife, our marriage, having our first child. These
Hmm.
were moments in time where the reality was above my expectations. I'm
Yes.
like, oh, reality right now, exactly as it is exceeding my expectations. And then now I'll let myself feel this internal joy.
Yeah.
Well, that internal joy is actually there all the time, so long as we don't block it by thinking reality isn't wonderful. You said something that was so profound just a few moments ago. You said we can have all this gratitude every day and stop and notice how wonderful our life is. This is
Yeah.
actually the key.
Yes.
So every single moment can be grand and beautiful, and we can have tears of gratitude about how wonderful it is, even the tough ones.
Yes.
It's just a
Yeah.
simple story we're telling ourselves. So a lot of times, though, the story we tell ourselves is, I'm not good enough yet. I don't have what I want yet. This isn't
Yeah.
quite right.
Yeah.
It's too hot outside. The government's doing things I don't like. The political things aren't doing things that I like. We're telling ourselves this whole story. So and so is mean to me. This is happening. My finances suck. I got into this wreck in my car. I've got this back pain. We're like coming up with all these reasons why our story of reality isn't enough. And then
For
every
sure.
time we do that, we argue with reality and we say it's not beautiful, our happiness comes down. And then we
Yeah.
only get to experience this surge of joy that is our actual nature on things that exceed our expectations. And that's so rare. It's so rare that our expectations just get so exceeded that we stop all the blocks and say, oh, reality isn't good right now. So
Uh-huh.
we want to every single day catch ourselves. If we're not feeling overtly joyful, if we're not feeling fantastic, enthusiastic, creative, optimistic, it means we're telling ourselves a story that something's not right in reality. And we
Yes.
can just change that story.
Yeah. So now, what if though, because I'm like putting myself in the listener's position here, right? Let's say they just got laid off, or they're going through a divorce, or they're dealing with something that in reality is not the way that they want it to be.
Yes. This is why happiness is a choice even when life gets tough.
That's right.
I just met with a wonderful human being who is going through a divorce after 20 years, not by her choice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's tough. It's like a whole life to 20 years is like a whole lifetime.
Ooh, sure
And
is.
and it is tough, right?
Yes.
We can't deny the tough experiences of life.
Yeah.
We cannot. And she said, yeah, there's days I just cry, and then there's days I'm feeling really optimistic about the future. And that is the way that we can traverse a really tough situation like this. I lost my stepdad last April,
Mm-hmm.
and he's OPA. He lives a mile
Mm,
from the house, riding his bike over, grandfather, he's such a big part of our life.
right.
You can't just say this doesn't suck.
Yes.
it sucked,
Yes.
right? And at the same time, every single day we found joy.
Yes. So you
So
can be with sadness and joy at the same time.
sadness is so beautiful. And in both of these cases, the woman mourning the loss of the life that she had,
Yes.
right? Us mourning the loss of Opa. Sadness is not a bad mood. It
Yeah.
shows us how much we love life. Like
Mm.
every time we're sad, it's because we just love life so much. So then
Yeah.
we can say, wow, I didn't tell him how special he was enough. I'm going to tell my mom that. I'm going
Mm.
to tell the people I work with that. I'm going to
Yeah.
hold my kids tighter. It kind of
Mm.
like opens our eyes to how precious all the good things are and also to the fact that they're all going to change.
Yes. Right. Because nothing that we don't want is permanent, and nothing that we do want is permanent. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then how, and then the next way out. So, one of my favorite thoughts on this, you just said, you used the example, I just got laid off from my job.
Hmm.
Oh, it sucks. Yeah, we're going to mourn it. Right.
Yeah.
But there's a whole story that goes into this. I got laid off. Probably the story says something like, it's unfair. I'm a victim. They shouldn't have done that. This person got to keep their job, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Without all of that victim story, anytime we have a victim story, we need to change it. Without all the victim story, what to do next is really simple.
Mm.
We look for a new job.
Right.
And as
Right.
soon as we start putting our future goals back in place, okay, this is my beautiful future. I said, hey, your level of stress increases and your fulfillment increases at the same time, so long as you have an optimistic view of the future.
Yes.
So if I'm feeling super stressed out about getting laid off and I'm stressed because I feel like it was unfair and I think I'll never get a job as good and then I'm stressed about these bills, I've got a negative, pessimistic view of the future and my fulfillment is dropping. Versus I get laid off from a job and I'm like, "Yeah, it kind of stings. I liked all the people there. I'm going to mourn the loss. I don't get to see some of my best friends again. And oh, I'm so glad that happened. I
Yeah.
felt kind of stagnant there. And now I get to pursue something that I'm really excited about. And I'm actually like brimming with excitement at the opportunity of doing this new career. And
Right.
this can turn the layoff from a story of suffering to a story of optimism, creativity, inspiration. And
Mm.
when, as soon as we do that, life is actually better than it was before.
Yes. I love that. So, how can somebody rewire their brain for this kind of positive outlook? Because I think that sometimes we're just so used to being in that automatic fear-based mind, right?
Hmm.
That
Yep.
takes us down the pessimistic uh trail, right? So what does it look like to rewire your brain for positivity?
I love this question because there are simple things we could do every day. I've been doing simple exercises to rewire my brain for positivity for a decade.
Yeah.
We have to understand how the brain works and what it's trying to do. It's trying to help us survive at
Mhm.
all times. Our brain, anytime we're in our head, we're in a survival logical brain.
Yep.
There's another part of intelligence within us. I access it through the heart. I think all of us do. There's an intelligence that's beyond the brain that actually is way smarter than the brain. It's beating our heart, it's growing our fingernails, it's growing our hair, it's repairing our cuts, just like Wolverine, like how does our cut heal on its own? We don't know how to do it. There's a crazy amount of intelligence that we can access. It's beyond the brain, and that's where we want to spend our time. And we do that in the present moment.
Right.
So, but let's first, you have to understand that the brain isn't always there to help us.
Mostly
It's
not.
right, it's
Yeah.
not. And
Yeah.
when we get stuck in pessimistic, negative thinking, and look, we're all going to spend time there sometimes. We're not immune. We all have this survival brain. We were given it. In fact, I would say we chose it. We chose to come here.
Yep.
We chose to have this experience as a human. We chose to have this evolutionary hardware that is afraid of what could hurt it and kill it.
Yes.
So the fear this anxiousness is always thinking, what is going to go wrong in the future? If I could just predict everything that could go wrong, then I could put preventation, I could stop all this bad stuff from happening, and then I'd
Yep.
be safe.
Yep.
Sure. Okay, but we're not going to be happy. So, because we're
Right.
going to be paranoid and anxious all the time,
Always waiting for
living,
that shoe to drop, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
waiting for this other shoe to drop. And
Yes.
then things get really good. This used to be me. No matter how good things got, I would just kept waiting for something bad to happen because I knew
Yeah.
something bad was coming, and I was waiting
Yeah.
for this bad other shoe to drop. And then one
Yes.
day I was like, you know what? There's no other shoe. Both shoes are on my feet,
Yeah.
and I am running to my greatest life. And every year that it gets better, it just keeps getting better and better. And it's just a new story I started to tell myself, that there's no other shoe that's going to drop. And no matter
Yes.
how good it gets, it keeps getting better.
Yeah.
Well, our life then manifests as a story that we tell.
Yes.
So if subconsciously I'm waiting for bad things to happen, subconsciously I have to attract something bad to me, because our brain, its number one job is to be right. So when it
Hmm.
says the other shoe is going to drop, it will manifest an accident, or it will manifest a disaster or a trauma.
Yes.
So it can say, see, I told you to be on the lookout for this. The
Yeah.
other shoe has dropped, and I told you to be aware of it, and now here it is.
Yeah.
Well, now, so my story, I noticed that BS story. I don't like it. And my story is, no matter how good it gets, it can keep getting better. Well, then
Yes.
my brain has to prove that that's right. And it's like,
Right.
okay, well, hey, your marriage is really good with Katie. How can it keep getting better? What an awesome question. Every time we ask our brain a question, it comes up with answers. And it
Hmm.
would say, oh, okay, well, you know what we could do? We could probably start to pamper her more. Maybe we could court her. Maybe I could, maybe I could rub her feet tonight. She loves when that happens, right? And so no matter how good our marriage is, it can always be better. No matter how good anything is, it can always be better. A
Yes.
key to happiness is progress.
Hmm.
When
Oh,
something
for
when
sure.
something is progressing,
Yes.
we feel really happy about it. And
Yeah.
this could be a marriage, this could be a career, this could be our physical health. So we always want to be thinking about progressing. And the fear-based mind is not thinking about progressing, it's thinking about protecting and keeping what it has. But we already
Right.
talked about this. We can't.
No.
It's all going to change.
Whether it's good or it's bad or it's right or it's wrong, it's all going to change.
It's all going to change. So we can't
Yep.
protect and keep everything the same. That's a
Yes.
fear-based mind, just wants to protect and keep everything the same.
Yes.
I want to be on the offensive. I want to be on the aggressive. I want to say, okay, well, if it's all going to change anyway, I'm going to dictate the change.
Yeah.
I'm going to envision my bigger future, my better future, and it'll change because I want it to change.
Yes. Yep. So I have a question for you, because you and I speak the same language, right? And so I can completely resonate with everything that you're saying. But I'm wondering if your old automatic mind sometimes rears its head, because I know mine still does. Right
All the
now, I
time.
know what it is.
All
Yeah.
the time.
Yes.
Every day.
Yep.
It rears its head every day. And so we were
Yep.
talking about, I got sidetracked. We were talking about rewiring it.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Yes.
And so
That's okay. There's just too much to talk about,
I
Matt. So
know, it's so fun with you, Joanna. It is,
Yeah.
it is so, because when you came on my show, I was like, oh, everything you're saying is exactly how I think.
Of
But
course.
but truth is truth. And so if you're listening to this episode and you keep listening to Joanna, everything she says is truth. And here's the relief. The greatest, most enlightened masters experience anger,
Mm-hmm.
fear, sadness,
Yeah.
hopelessness.
Yeah.
These, again, when we chose to be born, we chose to experience these emotions. So
Yes.
we can't experience all of if we were never born, and let's just say you don't have all these survival emotions, and I believe we're eternal beings, then you don't have to experience sadness or hopelessness or
Yeah.
shame.
Right.
But you also cannot experience like the extreme joy that we get
Mm-hmm.
here, the
Yeah.
extreme love that we get here, because love that's fleeting, knowing someone won't last forever, is
Yeah.
so much more fierce.
Ooh, it's true. Yeah.
So
And yeah.
the contrast in this realm of, yes, we have the dark and we have the fear and we're all going to experience it with,
Yeah.
oh, but then I've chosen confidence and I've chosen acceptance and I've chosen faith. The contrast, then these higher emotions feel so much better because we
Mm.
can contrast them with what it feels like on the other side. So what do I do when they rear their head?
Yeah.
It happens every day.
Mm-hmm.
This morning I woke up and I felt a little bit of anxiousness.
Yeah.
I start my day with a journal.
Yes. Yes.
So every day I start with a pen and paper
Mm-hmm.
and I just journal what I'm feeling. And
Yep.
it's just blank. It's a blank journal. And I just write. I just do stream of consciousness writing and I'll start and I'll say, today I'm feeling a little bit anxious. And then I'll
Mm-hmm.
guess. I'm like, what am I feeling anxious about? Like, well, there's this big lawsuit coming for realtors. It's all happening August 5th. Maybe my anxiousness is about this because one of the companies we own is a real estate brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm anxious that this is going to harm our income. And then, of course, down the line of that, then we won't have enough to survive and then we'll all die.
Right. Right.
It's a
Right.
survival
It
brain,
all
right?
goes back to survival. Yep.
But just writing it and getting out that, hey, I'm feeling a little bit anxious today. And then writing, and then I guess what is this emotion trying to say to me? What's it worried about? Okay, well, maybe it's worried about this. And then the next question you ask when you come up with what you're worried about is, what could I do to make my situation better today?
Mm.
And I said, well, today I could check in with my broker. And I did. I followed through on it. I checked in with her. We had a conversation and she said, hey, I'm doing a training on this today and then next Tuesday and the next Tuesday. And I'm like, fantastic.
Right.
And then that anxiousness is trying to help us always. It's just the fear is trying to help us protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, if you're trying to help me, then what can I do to actually help me? And then I take action on it. And as soon as we take action, the anxiousness goes away because that's
Yeah.
all it wanted. It was like, oh, you better protect yourself. And
Right.
as soon as you take action to do that, it subsides.
Hmm. Yeah, the action piece is important. The quote, Eckhart Tolle says that worry pretends to be necessary, right? And so, like, you were in worry brain, and many people will just stay there because it almost feels like, in some way, worry is a stress reliever, which is sort of right, because at least if we're worried about it, then we can somehow prevent the shoe from dropping. But the worry just robs us. And so you're saying when you find yourself in that worry, you journal and then you take one action that you can just do today.
Yeah.
And then what does that do for that
The
that
worry goes,
anxious
the
brain?
worry,
Yeah.
the worry goes away.
Amazing.
All it is a nudge for you to act. That's
Yep.
all. It's your survival brain is saying, hey, something could get you. Would you
Mm-hmm.
just act? Would you just do
Yeah.
something? It's when
Right.
we ignore it and we're like, oh, I don't have any worry. I'm happy. And we like just shove it down, right?
Yeah.
And then it will manifest even bigger and it could come as an anxiety attack because we haven't been listening to our body for all these years. And then it starts attacking us and saying, no, you are terrified.
Right.
And then we totally get terrified. Well, I want to be so in tune with my heart and the ups and downs
Mhm.
of it that every single this look, what else are we doing? That we don't have 10 minutes to sit with a journal every single day and say, what am I feeling?
Right.
And then what is this feeling trying to tell me? And then what can I do about it?
Yeah.
If we do that, all of a sudden our whole emotional system starts to become this huge helper and our
Mm.
life becomes really blessed and beautiful and we live a lot happier.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're saying is really profound and it's so simple. It's just turning towards that that fear that our primitive brain wants us to avoid. If you just turn towards it and just use it as, something to get curious about, it really is a game changer. It's unbelievable.
So there's eight primary negative emotions, and fear, this worry, this anxiety is one of the eight. Another big one for me, the biggest one was anger,
Yeah.
frustration, annoyance, just being, upset at somebody, feeling like, hey, this isn't right.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have treated me like that.
Mhm.
That emotion was a really powerful one for me, and it was a difficult one for me to learn how to transcend. And it would consume me. Like if somebody harmed me, I would be consumed with this anger for months
Mm.
where I couldn't get past it.
Yeah.
And anger can be really, really destructive because when we
Mhm.
when we have anger, and I had it for a long time,
Yeah.
it dampers everything. It dampers
Yeah.
all joy, all happiness. We can't have feelings of resentment
Yeah.
and joy at the same time.
Mm.
So we do need to learn how to conquer it. And anger, what it's every anger has a story too. Every single emotion has a story. And I just love to ask my emotion what story it's telling. So if you ever feel angry, you just say, what if this emotion of anger could talk, what would it say? This
Oh,
is what it'll say. I'll tell you, it always says the same thing.
yes.
Somebody did something wrong.
Mm.
Somebody was harmed because of it,
Yeah.
and it's their fault.
Ooh. Yep.
The story is always the same with anger.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is that we can have our story and our anger, or we can have happiness and joy. But we can't keep the story and be right about it and be joyful.
Yeah.
So if we want to be happy, but we have a story that somebody did something wrong and somebody was harmed and it's their fault,
Yes.
we have to drop the story. In fact, we have to actually see why that story is wrong. This can be really hard for people. I've got a lot of friends who will say, "Hey, I want to be happy, but you don't know. This one person did this to me and they did
Yeah.
this to me and I'm getting sued and it's unfair and blah blah blah." And I'm
Yes.
like that's a wonderful story. I said it's probably all true in your mind, but you can't be happy if you want to keep believing it.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, but no, it really is unfair what's happened." I'm like, "I'm not going to deny that it's unfair what's happened, and yet you won't be happy until you stop believing it." And so how do we stop believing it?
Mm-hmm.
So Byron Katie has got a really beautiful set of questions. And her
Yeah.
first question is it really true?
Mm.
So when we think of the story of anger that somebody did something wrong, you know, her next question is, can I absolutely know for a fact, 100% in their mind that they knew what they were doing was wrong? A lot of times you'll say, yeah, I can, but the reality is you can't ever get in someone's mind and know exactly what they're thinking. You
Right.
don't know their story. You don't know where they came from or how they were raised or what their values are. You don't know how much they've been harmed. The truth is everyone's doing the best they can.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
we have this story that they've done something wrong, there's another side of that, which is they've done something right. They've done the best they can do.
Mm.
The next thing you say, okay, well, I've been harmed from it. So, thinking about this conversation with my friend who lost money,
Yeah.
he got screwed out of a business deal in his language.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we investigate, so I'm like, okay, so you've been harmed from this, right? And he's like, yeah, we lost $100,000. And I said, well, let's look at the opposite of that. It's helped you. How's it helped you? And he said, well, I know now to look out for this and this and this. And I said, has your family really suffered without that 100,000? He's like, no, we're doing great. I'm like, so the story is you've been harmed, but have you really been harmed?
Wow. Yeah.
And he's like, Well, yeah, I mean, so, you can't let it go. You can't let
Yeah.
it go. But his family is thriving. His
Yeah.
business is thriving. He didn't
Yeah.
need the $100,000,
Right.
but he wants to hold on to the story that he's been harmed, but he hasn't been harmed. He's
Mhm.
learned some new lessons. He now has some new ways of seeing the world. He has an opportunity to work on forgiveness. He has an opportunity to work on compassion. He has an opportunity to work on himself. All
Yeah.
of these are benefits from this. And so the last thing of anger is it's all their fault. And usually, if we're being honest, if there's a conflict, we have had at least some part to blame.
Yes, for sure.
And we don't want to admit that. And
Mhm.
so when I dug into it with him and I said, is it partially your fault? He was able to say, yeah, actually I did this. And, I wasn't fully transparent here and I could have done better there. And I'm like, okay, so we started to unwind the story that
Yeah.
got him so angry about how he had been harmed and it was all this other person's fault. And as soon as we did that, like, man, he reached out to me later and he said, I can't even tell you how much more free
Oh,
I feel now that I've
wow.
dropped that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
our mind won't drop it because this is a survival mind. And what we used to do, like I watched the play Hamilton with my wife. If somebody disrespected you in that era, you would shoot them.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
So our survival mind literally wants to kill someone
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
harmed us. And that's
Yeah.
what this anger is. Anger is puffing us up to take aggressive action and kill them.
Mm.
But it's not going to make us happy.
Yeah. And it actually is poison for us, right? Like we can
Mhm.
walk around being angry for the rest of our lives because we were victimized and they did this and they shouldn't have done it and what's wrong with them. But really, at the end of the day, we're the ones that are suffering as a result of that. They're just
Yeah.
continuing to go on with their life.
Yeah, I love what you said. Anger is like drinking poison, thinking it's going to harm them.
That's exactly right. Yeah. 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 It's so, and here's the thing, Matt, it's so powerful when you say it. Okay. It's not, but and it's amazing that your friend got it in a day because sometimes people have been carrying around anger for decades upon decades.
Me,
Yeah.
I'm one of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, when I was a small child, my dad was extremely emotionally abusive. It was crazy. It was living with Jekyll and Hyde.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
as a 5-year-old, when somebody is a lunatic, it's crazy scary.
Absolutely.
And as a little kid, you are a victim. I couldn't protect myself. I couldn't
Right.
help myself. I was a victim. And then so as
Yeah.
I grew, I was angry. And
Mm.
I had a ton of anger.
Yeah.
I had anger that I didn't have a father figure. I had anger that my dad was the person that he was. I had anger at God for not giving me a dad that could, father me, right?
Yes.
And then I would get angry at other family members or friends. Like it was a whole theme with me.
Yes.
And
Wow.
I had to do a lot of work, like years of work
Yeah.
to unwind all of that anger. And then
Wow.
at the end of it, you end up seeing the truth. Like, oh, wait a minute. It was again the same story I was talking about with my friend. I was telling myself that I didn't have the dad I wanted.
Yes.
And yet he's exactly the dad that put me on the path to helping other people be happy.
Oh my
And I'm
gosh.
so fulfilled with this work. And I wouldn't have it if I'd had the dad that was throwing the ball with me.
Amazing.
Right. And then the other side of it is, oh, I didn't have any strong male role models. Total lie. I had an older brother. Right. And then I ended up getting a stepdad later in life who was just this awesome male role model. God was sending me other male role models, but yet in my anger, I was mad at God for not giving me it the way I thought it should be.
Wow. So, Matt, do you think that without that belief in God, without that spiritual side, would you have been able to let go of the anger to the degree that you have?
Not at all.
Yeah.
No. So I was an atheist in my 20s.
Hmm.
And I used to look at people who were spiritual and say, oh man, I wish I had what they had. They're so much happier, but they're stupid.
Yeah.
My family and I watched this show, Young Sheldon, and
Okay.
young
Yeah.
Sheldon's a really smart, genius kid,
Right.
and he doesn't believe in God. His mom does, and he's like, it's okay, mom. Like he's just a genius, and he just thinks he can explain everything with science. That was me in my 20s. I thought I could explain the whole world in science, and I'm like, now because I know science, I know that all the stuff you believe in your books and everything just isn't true. But you're really happy kind of being oblivious to the way things really work. It wasn't until my 30s when I started to have spiritual experiences, and I didn't know that they were spiritual experiences, but it was really manifestation. As soon as it was the movie The Secret, and I'm like, wait a minute. If I could literally manifest things out of thin air with my thoughts,
Yeah.
there's something way more magical to the world than just science. And
Yes.
that started to open me back up to spirituality in a new way. I had
Mm.
rebelled against what I thought were really silly rules, like only if you say religion in this certain way, then will God have favor on you. Otherwise, you'll burn forever. And I'm like,
Right.
that doesn't make any sense to me. And so I'm like, that just can't be true.
Right.
And then when I came back through personal experience with the magic of the world, then I was like, then everything started to open up in new ways.
Yeah.
And I realized we weren't just this survival brain and body, that we actually were eternal. And then more and more and more, I started to have personal experiences with the divine and how magical the world really is.
Yes.
You cannot be lasting happy without a spiritual belief.
Mm. Yeah.
Otherwise, we just believe that anything that's going to threaten our life is evil, anything that, and then there's all this judgment and
Yes.
all this resentment, and we will
Yes.
just be perpetually in bad moods because we think that this is just one shot and it's final. It's not true. It isn't just one shot and it's not just final. And if you want to believe more about spirituality, it'll happen. Just your intention to believe it will start to give you experiences that show you the truth.
Yeah. Well, it's so paradoxical, right? Because if you think that everything in your life is up to you and you're the one that's going to make it happen, and you're the one that has to get your kids to turn out, and you got to get your business to turn out, and you got to get your life to turn out, that's actually antithetical to happiness, right? Of
Mhm.
course we have to take actions, but it's actually the more that we let go and recognize that life is a co-created experience, right? That we've got some part in it, that the divine has some part in it, that even as parents, you have 4 kids, I have 3 kids, I had to learn this with my kids too, that I can provide guidance, I can provide love. In fact, I think that's really the only role that we have as parents, right? Is just love, right? And then we can provide guidance, but really, it's really up to them how their life is going to unfold. We can set certain parameters, but the more that we stop trying to dictate and orchestrate so many parts of our lives, I think the happier we are because we feel more at peace.
This is one of my daily routines. So we were talking about how can we rewire our brain. We want to use our brain less. So
Yeah,
as you just described, I want to be a co-creator with the divine. I want to be a co-creator with God. Whatever your word is, you can say co-creator with the universe. For me, it's God. It's just the word that resonates the most with me.
that's right.
But it doesn't matter what word you use. It's
Yep.
being, as Joanna just said, a co-creator with this force.
Yes.
Well, in fact, I just want to surrender to it.
Yeah.
So every morning I meditate because I want my thoughts to calm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I focus on my heartbeat, and then I pray. And I pray gratitude. I'm like, "Oh, thank you for the heartbeat today. Thank you
Yes.
for this wonderful experience yesterday. Thank you for that time with my daughter. Thank you for that time with my wife. Like this, I'm so grateful this morning. And I'll just go into total gratitude to
Mm,
this force that gave me the day yesterday
yes.
and
Yes.
is giving me this morning and is giving me the opportunity to have this day. And
Yeah.
then I surrender in that moment. I say, God, guide me.
Yep.
I'm your instrument today.
Mm,
However you see it fit for me to be used, I'm
yeah.
here. Whoever
Yeah.
you want me to see, I'll see. Whatever you want me to say, I'll say. If whatever you want me to experience, I'll experience. I am here for all of it. And I just trust it.
Yeah.
And then amen. And I go into my day and I'm like, whatever happens is divinely inspired. So what a cool story is this? Because all
Wow.
of our happiness just comes from stories. And so then if something happens that my ego doesn't like let's say somebody disrespects me or somebody harms me in some way, I'm like, man, I asked God to guide me today. This is the experience I'm supposed to be having. So there's a
Wow.
blessing in it somewhere.
Yeah.
God wouldn't give me something that isn't here to help me in some way. And so
Yes.
now this is the happiest possible story we could ever have.
Mm,
If we want to have unlimited happiness, it is daily prayer to be guided and to have experiences that will enrich us and a full belief that that prayer is heard and then answered every single day.
yeah.
Here's my personal belief. You don't
Hmm.
even have to say that prayer. God is giving every single person the experience they're supposed to be having for their highest growth.
Yes.
Most of us just don't believe it.
Right.
And so then
Right.
we resist it and we fight it. And in the very beginning of this episode, I talked about how happiness is really just loving the reality we have in front of us.
Yes.
We love the reality we have in front of us when our story says, this is a wonderful reality. We
Mm,
get that story at all times when we say, this is guided by God's infinite love for me. Even this challenging situation is God
yeah.
loving me. He's
Yeah.
asking me to become more. He's asking me to grow. He's asking
Hmm.
me to become more compassionate, more forgiving, more loving, more understanding in this situation. This situation is going to enrich me in a way that nothing else could. In
Wow.
fact, I grow my most when it's challenging.
Yes. Of course. We all do. Yeah, I have very, very similar conversations with God, except I call her she. So it's the only thing
Oh,
that's
she is the best.
so
Yeah, there's a divine mother.
yes,
There's a total divine mother. There's a total divine father.
of course.
And
Yeah.
and it's all this like once we get in touch with this energy, you don't ever want to be out of touch with it.
Yeah.
But I get out of touch with it when I get stuck in fearful survival thinking.
Absolutely. And so yeah, for me it's the dance between catching myself in my automatic fear survival self, right? I call that the inner critic self, and then doing all of the work that you've described today, journaling, meditation. Sometimes I walk my dog and I just talk out loud to God. My neighbors probably think I'm crazy because I'm walking around my neighborhood talking to myself, but that's okay.
Oh, it's so good. Walking your dog is so good.
Yes.
Yes, you're outside,
Yeah.
you're moving your body.
Yeah.
One of the keys to getting out of our head, and which is what we're
Mhm.
talking about, because joy is in the present,
Yes.
is moving our body.
Yeah.
And you're not a crazy person. If I
No,
saw
I
you
know.
walking through my neighborhood talking to yourself, I'd be like, Joanna's a little crazy, but I love her anyway.
That's right. That's right. And I really don't care because it creates heaven on earth for me, so I'm gonna
That's
do it.
it.
Yeah.
What a lovely, lovely conversation to talk about how having heaven on earth. The one thing I want to leave the listener with today is we are in heaven right
Yeah.
now. This
Yeah.
is it.
Yeah.
There's not, as I said earlier, when you leave your body, your soul will continue, and you won't have all the negative survival emotions, but you also won't have access to how blissful it can be in
Yeah.
contrast with the dark.
Yep.
So we are here, we are in the promised land right now. The
Yes.
only thing getting in the way of it is a story that it's not right.
That's That is a mic drop right there. I could listen to you forever, Mike. This Matt. I'm sorry, Mike, Matt. Where can my listeners find you?
Well, the best way is to plug in through Good Mood Revolution podcast. And please tune in and listen to Joanna's episode. We had so much fun.
We did.
And then the book Good Mood Revolution, where I talk about the actual strategies to get out of each of these bad moods we talked about today, is on pre-order on Amazon.
Thank you so much. This was a really powerful, powerful conversation. I'm going to actually listen back and take some of my own notes. So thank you for today. It was wonderful.
It's such an honor to be here.